Sean Diddy Combs has just been dealt one of the harshest blows in his ongoing legal saga. On September 30th, just days before his sentencing, a federal judge denied his last-minute request for an acquittal and a new trial. With that decision, the door has slammed shut on his hopes of walking free, and the countdown to his sentencing has officially begun. Now the world waits to see how many years one of hip-hop's biggest moguls will spend behind bars. The case has captivated headlines for over a year, weaving together elements of wealth, celebrity, abuse, power, and control. For decades, Sean Combs has been seen as a towering figure in music, fashion, and culture. He built Bad Boy Records into a household name, discovered and shaped artists like the Notorious B.I.G., Mace, and Faith Evans, and expanded his empire into clothing lines, vodka brands, and entertainment platforms. He wasn't just a music mogul, he was an empire builder. But behind the glossy public persona, allegations of violence, coercion, and manipulation began surfacing, and in September 2024, his world imploded when federal prosecutors brought forward a sprawling case against him. In July of this year, after weeks of harrowing testimony and disturbing evidence, a jury handed down its verdict. Diddy was acquitted of the most serious charges: sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and racketeering conspiracy. These convictions might sound less explosive than the charges he dodged, but make no mistake, they carry serious weight both legally and morally. Now facing sentencing on October 3rd, Diddy attempted one final move. His lawyers argued that the jury's decision was tainted by prejudice, that the jury had been unfairly swayed by testimony about the more sensational allegations, which were ultimately rejected. They claimed the evidence on the transportation charges wasn't strong enough to stand on its own. But Judge Arun Subramanian didn't buy it. He said the evidence was overwhelming. The jury's decision was sound, and that no amount of legal maneuvering could erase what had already been proven in court. With those words, Diddy's hopes of overturning his conviction evaporated. Prosecutors are now calling for a sentence of more than 11 years, precisely 135 months in prison. They paint a picture of a man who abused his power for decades, using fear, violence, and control to dominate those around him. They argue that Diddy has shown no real remorse, no acknowledgement of the damage he caused, and that his wealth and fame allowed him to silence victims for too long. They want his sentence to send a message: no matter how powerful, no one is above accountability. But Diddy's defense team is fighting for a very different outcome. They're asking for a sentence of just 14 months, less than a year and a half, and they argue he's already served much of that time behind bars since his arrest. They claim the punishment prosecutors are seeking is excessive, especially given that the jury threw out the most serious allegations. They frame Diddy as a man who made mistakes, yes, but who does not deserve to spend over a decade in prison for them. This clash, prosecutors demanding years, the defense begging for mercy, has made the upcoming sentencing one of the most closely watched moments in celebrity legal history. And at the center of it all are the voices of the women who stood up against him. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former longtime girlfriend, delivered one of the most emotional statements yet. In a letter to the judge, she described years of abuse, manipulation, and fear. She wrote that Diddy destroyed lives with his control and begged the court not to allow him another chance to harm others. She described her life under his control as one of terror, where her career, her family, and even her physical safety were constantly under threat. She wrote of nights she was coerced into participating in disturbing sex events, some of which she said were filmed without her consent. She confessed that she still fears retaliation, even now with him behind bars. Another woman, known only as Jane, gave testimony that stunned the courtroom. She described being brutally assaulted in June 2024, dragged by her hair, choked, beaten, and left bruised and bloodied. She spoke of threats, manipulation, and humiliation, including threats that intimate videos of her would be released without her permission. The jury was shown disturbing photos and video evidence, texts, and recordings that backed up her claims. Though the jury ultimately did not convict on the trafficking and racketeering charges tied to her testimony, her words left a lasting mark on the trial and on public opinion. For Diddy, the damage is already immense. His once untouchable empire has crumbled. Major brands and business partners have cut ties. His public image, once synonymous with success and glamour, is now shadowed by scandal. He remains behind bars at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, his requests for bail denied again and again. Judges have ruled that he poses a flight risk, that his wealth and influence mean he could disappear or manipulate the process. Even a $50 million bail proposal wasn't enough to sway the court. And the public reaction has been divided. Many see the case as a moment of long overdue justice, praising the women who came forward despite the risks of taking on a billionaire celebrity. Supporters of Cassie and other accusers have filled social media with messages of solidarity, saying this case shows that no matter how powerful, abusers can be held accountable. But there is another side too. Some loyal fans of Diddy insist he has been unfairly targeted, a victim of a biased system and sensationalist media coverage. They argue that prosecutors overreached with charges they couldn't prove, and now they're demanding an extreme sentence just to salvage their case. Yet, despite the noise, one fact remains. Diddy has been convicted, he will be sentenced, and the clock is ticking. For a man who once sat at the very top of music, who threw legendary parties, who was photographed with presidents, superstars, and royalty, the fall has been staggering. If prosecutors get their way, he'll spend more than a decade in prison, his empire shattered, his name forever linked not to triumph, but to disgrace. If his defense somehow convinces the judge to be lenient, he could be walking free much sooner than anyone expects. But even then, the shadow of this case will follow him for the rest of his life. This is more than just the story of one man's downfall. It's a story about power, about how fame can shield someone from scrutiny for years, and how those shields can finally crumble when victims speak up. It's about a music mogul who built an empire but now faces the possibility of spending some of his prime years in a prison cell. All eyes are now fixed on October 3rd. That is when the judge will decide. Will Sean Diddy Combs spend the next decade of his life behind bars, or will he walk out sooner with a lighter sentence that will no doubt spark outrage? One thing is certain. This moment will define the legacy of one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this.